Head coach Dave Rubio here, and we will use the raise hand function. Please utilize that, and I will call on you. We'll start off with Sean. You're up first.
Mike, can you turn this up? Is that possible?
I'll bring a remote in there.
Yeah.
Hey, Coach. Hopefully you can hear me then. So I was wondering, doing well. How are you?
Good, thanks.
So, Coach, I wanted to ask you. Last time, China was out in concussion protocol, and Paige did play in the UCLA series, but I know that you were monitoring her. So I was wondering, is there any update you could possibly provide on China? And then is Paige still looked at as day-to-day, or would you say that she's in a condition where she's looked at as ready to go in future series?
So China is still out and still in protocol, and I don't think we're going to have her this weekend, unfortunately. But Paige played last weekend, and it was great to have her back. It certainly was a welcome back for us, and helps us quite a bit when she's healthy. She'll be fine this weekend. She'll play this weekend. So outside of that, we had a little bit of a scare yesterday or the day before with Akia coming down with a little bit of feeling ill. It's like everything now falls under the COVID protocol, right? I mean, you have a hangnail, and it's like, okay, I think you better be tested for COVID. So fortunately, she tested negative for that with the PCR test, and the people who got contract traced because of that. So we're back today. We were back to full strength, with the exception of China.
So in that UCLA series, Coach, I know there were times where it was competitive, and then there were some sets where it was unfortunately a little bit out of reach. Is there anything that you spoke to your team about with that series from UCLA that, even though unfortunately it didn't go the team's way, that you can maybe take into one of the most hotly contested series, of course, with ASU, and to use that and to bounce back from that series and be able to take some of these sets and matches from ASU?
Yeah, the UCLA match was an interesting weekend. On paper and watching the video and scouting those guys as thoroughly as we do, I really felt like it was a mismatch for us. I mean, they're just an offensive juggernaut. And even though they lost their setter, which I think is a big loss for them, the system that they ran, the 6-2, the setting was really a non-factor. And playing there is different than playing at home. I obviously that goes without saying, but they use a different ball there, and the ball's a little bit lighter, and so it takes the ball really moves differently than the molten ball that we use, and it takes a little getting used to. I thought that the first night we did a great job of serving and took them out of system, and that allowed us to be a little bit better defensively and put ourselves in a position to at least go 5 sets with them. I also thought that Mac May had an off night. She hit a $154, which is a returning conference player of the year. And so when she's off, then that gives the opposing team that's a glimmer of hope. But I really thought that Sunday we had a chance to come in and really compete with them, and really it wasn't a contest. I mean, those guys really took it up to another level, and we kind of didn't, and were not capable of kind of matching their stride, unfortunately. And so it was disappointing that we didn't compete better on Sunday. I was disappointed when we didn't serve very well. They passed great. They made some nice adjustments. The thing that I didn't do is I didn't account for the adjustments that they might have made or were going to make. And so that was tactically, it kind of falls on my shoulders in regards to making some adjustments. But every opportunity we can to play against an elite team, we're significantly better than we were just even 2 weeks ago. And so when we play a really good team like UCLA against really good players, it helps our young players develop. So even though it's a loss and L in the loss column, I feel like with our team, every opportunity we can to compete takes us that much closer to the team that we might possibly become in the future.
And then last question for you, Coach. What would you say is the key to success in coming out with of victories against ASU in both the matches that you have coming up against them, one at home and then one at Desert Financial?
Well, I think, regardless of the opponent, you win a match and it's more relief than it is anything else. I mean, there's misery and suffering when you lose, and really just kind of relief when you win. So, there's always the in-state rivalry that plays a part of competing when you play ASU, and there's certainly a lot at stake there. But I think both teams are so young. I mean, I think ASU is the one team that might be younger than us, which is, really something to say because we're pretty young. But ASU is this, I mean, they may be significantly younger than us. So I think it's going to be a very competitive match on Friday and Sunday. I'm not sure how well played it's going to be, but I feel like it's going to be a very competitive match.
Tim, you're up next.
Dave, last year ASU swept you guys for the first time in years, and you felt like they weren't ready for what ASU was going to give you last year. Do you think they're ready this year? And I mean, it's a different team, but what do you see as ASU's strengths?
Well, last year, ASU certainly we opened up at their place, if I remember correctly, and they played fantastic. I mean, they were really hitting on all cylinders, and we were still kind of feeling our way through things from a lineup standpoint, and so they played terrific. And then the second time we played them, we were out 3 starters, and I thought we were in a much more competitive, despite the fact that we were out 3 starters. I thought we were way more competitive in lost 16-14 or 15-13 in the 5th game. And so I'm not sure what quite to expect this weekend. I think with the youth of both teams, there's going to be a little bit of inconsistencies. ASU's had the benefit of being at home I'm not sure if that's beneficial or not, but in terms of preparation and getting a chance to scout us, they have 2 weeks to prepare for us versus a week that we have. But whether or not that makes a difference, I don't know. With young kids, asking them to make adjustments and make changes always takes more time than kids who've been in the program for a few years.
Ryan, you're next.
So other sports at the U of A have been able, the players have been able to bring family members to their games. Is that something that your players are going to be able to do this weekend?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that, Ryan? A little muffled for me on that.
Yeah. So other U of A teams have their players have been able to bring family members to games recently. Right. Will you be able to do that as well?
Yeah, I think that the word on the street is that we're going to be able to have parents be able to join us this week, first time. So that makes it nice. I know that ASU's had that for the last few contests, but we've been a little slower to make some of those changes. But it'll be nice to have the parents here and certainly some family members.
And how important do you think that is for someone like Paige, who could be, entering the final stretch of her career, and to be able to have some family members in attendance? I don't know if that's the case for her, but
I think the players always enjoy playing in front of family members and fans. I mean, I think that's one of the things that's been interesting, just, playing in a soundless, huge arena everywhere we go. But I think the parents will enjoy it maybe more than the kids do. I mean, the parents are, as a parent, we certainly know that. I mean, I'm not sure how much the kids really, pay attention to it, other than the fact that I think that it makes their parents happy. It would certainly make me happy if I could go see my kid play.
And what have you just thought about the season that Paige has had? I know she's battled that back injury, but other than that, how do you think she's played and led this young group?
Well, in terms of leadership, she's been fantastic. Even the time that she was out and didn't play against, I forget who was it Oregon that she wasn't?
Oregon and Oregon State, yeah.
Yeah, and so, but she was like another coach on the bench for us. She was fantastic, and even in practice, when she wasn't practicing, she was out on the floor giving feedback and instruction, and so really invaluable for us and for me as a coach. So that part's been outstanding. I think physically, she's probably about 80 to 90% maybe. I mean, you'd have to ask her kind of where she's at. Today, I thought was one of the best practices she's had. And if you walked in the door and you compared what she had done last year to how she practiced today, I thought that today was probably one of the best practices physically that she's had. I saw her move and jump and hit, kind of like the player that played last year.
PJ, go ahead.
Yeah, Dave, you mentioned that the ball was different at UCLA. I thought everybody used the same ball.
Right.
Could you expound on that a little?
Certainly. That my former assistant coach, Greg Whitus, who I just talked to a few days ago, was lamenting about that again, because I was, of course, whining about the fact that the ball was so much lighter and we had a much more difficult time passing that ball. They play with the Wilson ball. We play with the Molten ball. As a conference, the coaches, we all decided that that we would all have an opportunity to get their own ball contract. So if there was an opportunity for someone to get their own individual deal, then we would allow them to do that. And as long as they sent, I think, a half dozen balls to each team to allow this to play with them, then we felt that was fine. And so, we're looking after the opportunity for players, or giving the opportunity for other coaches to make their own ball deal if they can.
Okay. It just seemed odd that somebody would play with a different ball to me, but, and obviously it does make a little difference, right?
Yeah, if I'm the opposing coach and someone's complaining about the ball, I don't have a lot of sympathy for them. I'm like, well, the ball's the same on both sides of the net, and which is true, so it's not, I have some reservation about even making a comment about it, because I know how it sounds, but we did struggle with it. I mean, at the end of the day, they're a very good serving team. That's the thing you don't want to take, the ball had very little to do with how well they served. We just had a difficult time Sunday passing the ball, and certainly Friday as well. And certainly they did on Friday night. I mean, they didn't pass particularly well either, and that was the reason why the sets were so close.
And for you to be really competitive this weekend against your rivals, what do you need to do?
Well, the last couple weekends of competition I don't think that our serving and passing has been as efficient and nearly at the level it had been prior to the last 2 weekends. And so that's since the season started, those are the two areas that typically everyone else is trying to fix and get better at, and we've been really good at that. So we need to be really solid in those two areas. The serving needs to be good. The serve receive needs to be better. Against UCLA, one of the key points for us is that it was a race to 25. We weren't going to stop them. I mean, we got to get between 14 to 16 kills per set. That's how I felt that in order for us to be competitive with UCLA. I think the most number of kills we had was 11. All right. And so I think the same goes with Arizona State. I think we need to get between 14 to 16 kills per set to be competitive and have a chance to win the sets. So that's going to be important. In order to do that, you got to pass inside out.
Okay, we got time for one more here. We'll go back to Ryan.
Kind of just back to Paige. I don't know if she's giving you any indication of if she plans to return next season or not, but if she is entering the final stretch of her career, I mean, when you look back at her career here, what do you think her legacy will be as a player?
Well, I think that foremost, she's just a quality young lady. I think that, when you recruit, number one thing on your agenda as a college coach is recruit quality young people. And she certainly fits that criteria in terms of how she handles her business off the floor and how she handles herself when she's in practice. The examples she sets every single day is something as a college coach that you're hoping for, that each one of your players behaves the same way that she has done. From a playing standpoint, she's been a 4-year starter for us. From the minute that she walked in the door, Paige was a starter. And so I think that she could probably do a better job of chronicling her career here in terms of how she's felt from freshman year to where she is as a senior right now. The program's been in different places her freshman year to where it is right now. So it'd be interesting to see what her statements are and what her responses would be, how her experience has been from her freshman year to her senior year. This year being so different than any other year. Whether or not she comes back, the invitation certainly is there for her. I'm not sure if physically she's going to be able to do that, depending on how her back feels. And I think that emotionally and mentally, you just have to be in a good place, in the right place, in order to want to do that, to come back. And I was telling the players today, we're going 6 days a week. You're taking one day off, but it's a grind right now for everybody. We're in the middle of the season, just finished our 6th week. We have 5 more weeks left to go, or really 4.5 now. But it's, you're grinding on them, as a coach, especially with a young team every day, in terms of learning how to practice every day and pushing them physically to the limit. So, I think this the mental and emotional component is there. And I think that she's someone that never makes an impetuous or a quick decision. She'll think about it after the season and then let us know how she feels about coming back.
All right. Thanks, Dave.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thanks.
All right. We've got Paige Whipple here. Anne Marie, you're first. Go ahead and what's your question for Paige?
Hey, Paige, now that you've been back after missing a few games, can you give us kind of a percentage in how you're feeling, how today's practice went, et cetera, please?
Yeah, I think taking the time off was definitely necessary for me. When we were in Oregon, after Friday night's match, I kind of got to the point where I was like, I don't think I can give 100% right now in terms of, physically. And so I think taking that week, it was 10 days total. I think taking that time off was really beneficial for me. The rest definitely helped, but the plan was to take the week, not play the Oregon State weekend, and then start practice the following Tuesday, which is exactly what I did. And last week was my first week back to practice. And in terms of, my injury, it's been okay to manage. Hasn't gotten much worse since the improvement from the rest. And so I'm kind of just taking it day by day, having to manage, things that I'm doing in practice and what I'm doing in the weight room, so that I can finish out the next 5 weeks without having to, sit out again. So as of now, I'm doing good.
Ryan?
So Dave was telling us that you guys will be able to have family members at the match. Are you planning to have any people there?
I don't think any of my family's coming this weekend, but they are coming for obviously senior weekend. My whole family, my immediate family will be here, and then they'll be able to watch us play at Washington State as well, because they're allowing fans as well. But it's been different not having family in the stands. Last season, my mom traveled to every single match except, I think, the Colorado and Utah weekend. So, and then years before that, she traveled to pretty much everywhere she could as well. And so not having her in the stands every weekend, and then my other family traveling, driving to watch me play at Oregon State and Cal and Stanford and those close places has just been really different. But I know that they're supporting me just the same, regardless of whether they're physically here or not.
And Dave said when you weren't playing, you were kind of like an extra coach on the bench. So what was kind of your approach with that? Yeah,
so David told me that he wanted me to do that. He wanted me to give feedback, and he's kind of wanted me to do that all along. Just because I've played for him for 4 years, and I've kind of got to the point where I see someone do something and I know exactly the thing that Dave is going to say to them before he even says it. And I've just gotten to know his personality and his coaching style that well. And so he was kind of asking me to do that in that sense, because I think a lot of times teammates that, have trust with me, or they trust me and they respect me as a person and as a friend, I think that sometimes they receive that feedback coming from me, maybe in a more gentler way than Dave might give it to them. So I was just trying to be supportive and encouraging in the best way that I can, but also, helping them with things that I saw, because I was seeing a lot more of what was going on the court from an outsider perspective than when I'm physically playing and only kind of paying attention to me and the things that I'm involved in at the moment.
And now that you're kind of entering, I don't know if what your plan is for coming back next season, if that's something you've thought about, but if you are entering the final stretch of your career, when you look back on I guess what you've accomplished and just how your career has gone, I mean, what kind of stands out to you? Like, what are you going to take away from it?
I think, well, every year of my 4 years, thus far has looked completely different, just in terms of clientele on the team, the success that we've had. My freshman year, we only won 3 conference games, and so coming in and that being my first year, it was like, wow, like this is crazy. And then we've had a bit more success in the last couple years, but I think just the day-to-day that being a student athlete at the Division I level, the day-to-day stuff really prepares, I think, student athletes to go forward in life. The things that we have to do, time management and being prepared for classes and having to go straight from practice to class. It just takes a lot of mindfulness and a lot of preparation, a lot of ability to time manage. And so I think that those like practical life skills that have come from this are the things that I'm going to take forward. And, work ethic and being able to work with other people on a daily basis and in kind of a team unit. I think those things that we learn in sports and the things that we learn, being a college student athlete can apply to life going forward. And so I think a lot of those skills I've been able to develop and improve on as a person.
And then this season specifically, I mean, how would you kind of evaluate the way you've played? But then I know you've had the injury and everything, and then there's COVID. So how do you think you've played? And then I guess how would you just evaluate how this season has gone for you?
Mm-hmm. I think last year, comparing this year to last year, I think last year I carried a huge offensive load. We had several offensive players out, and I was getting, 60 to 90 sets a game, which is kind of unheard of for an outside hitter or for any, attacker. So I carried a huge offensive load that last year, whereas this year we have offensive threats coming from a lot of different places that we were kind of lacking in last year. And so it's been a little bit of a different role that I've played, because last year I was, getting set so often. And then now we're able to spread the offense and set other people. And so I'm not getting set as often. But I think with that, I have been able to pay a little bit more attention to the other roles that I play on the team. I think that my serving and my passing game is a huge aspect to the team. And just like, it's been less focused on what I'm doing offensively and more on how am I helping the team as a whole and in all the positions that I'm playing, not just as an attacker. And I think in terms of leadership too, last year we had, Julia Patterson was our captain and the setter, and she was the one who was always the most vocal. And I've never really been a huge vocal leader. I've kind of just, led by example from behind the scenes. But this year I've kind of had to step into more of a vocal role, which has been different for me, but I think it has really, really helped me. And I love, like all of my teammates are like my little babies, my little children. I love helping them, and regardless of how they're feeling, good, bad, or indifferent, being able to pull from my experience from 4 years and share those things with them. So yeah, physically, I'm just kind of doing my thing, but I think my leadership, mentally and emotionally for the young team, is what I've been able to contribute the most this year.
PJ, you're next.
Hi, Paige.
Hi.
Can you walk us through what it felt like when you hurt your back and how that went? What was going on? Where were you? Where were you it sounds like it was during a set. What was going on?
Yeah, so I had been struggling with back pain since after the New Mexico State match. So it had been happening for about a month. I'd been, in treatment, doing rehab stuff. I was in the training room before and after practice almost every day, doing what I could to, manage my pain and to be able to keep playing. But like I said, when we were in Oregon, Friday's match, I felt okay. And then Saturday, we were at practice, and it was just a moment of like, I don't think that this moment in time right now, me playing, is worth, a back injury is something that stays with people for their entire life. And so I had to kind of evaluate the importance of what I was doing right now and wanting to play right now and that desire to play, but also wanting to, not put myself in a position to have long-standing injuries, for the rest of my life. And so that was a tough decision, but ultimately I was okay with it because, even though this is my senior year and potentially my last, I'm not sure what I'm doing yet, but I've taken a kind of a step back and gained a better perspective over athletics in terms of just like my personal career and what it means to me. Volleyball's going to end, and I kind of had to put that into perspective and realize that I didn't want to deal with a back injury the rest of my life. And so taking that time off, stepping back, taking the time to take some rest, I think helped me moving forward. And now I have a better idea of how far I can push, how much I can do before I need to, step back again.
And one follow-up, I was talking about perspective. I did want to ask, now I know that, in the past you've missed games, like you've had concussions and different things, but this time, did it give you a different perspective as a player, because you were, coaching your teammates and doing things like that? Did you see different things happening out there that now you're bringing back to your game?
I can't think of anything specifically as of right now. I will say in terms of I think for the young people on my team, I think it was good for them that I was out. I can't think of anything specifically for myself that I brought back, but I think me being the person who is now like a vocal leader and very much obviously the only senior on the floor, I think me stepping out and not being available to play, I think a lot of the younger people, especially Emery, our setter, was really forced to step into a bigger leadership role. And a lot of the young girls realize that even though they're freshmen and sophomores and that they're young, that they still have loads to carry on the team. And I think that was good for the team overall, because I think a lot of people stepped into more confident leadership positions without me being out there.
Sean, you're next.
Thanks for being here, Paige. So, Coach informed us that China will unfortunately still remain out for this next series. So, with her being out, do you feel there's any aspects of her game that the team will need to make up for? Whether it be blocking, whether it be defense. What do you feel that the team should look out for in her absence?
Well, I think China, just given her size, she's 6'6" and just is a huge presence on the court. And so losing her, we definitely lose a little bit of size, which is challenging just because, when you're facing someone who's that many inches taller than you, you kind of have to game plan a little bit different about how you're going to attack against someone like China. And so having Marla now in her place, I think Marla adds a lot to the team, but obviously doesn't have the same type of size. But Marla has stepped into that role. She brings so much energy to the court, and regardless of how she's feeling or, coming off the bench cold, she always comes in and contributes something. And she's been able to, set a really good block, which makes it easier for the defense to play behind. She's been able to score a little bit offensively. She's been able to, bring vocal leadership. And so I think that obviously China has done great things for us in the first few weeks of the conference, but I think that Marla has definitely stepped up into that role without China being there.
And then last question for you. I know that with the ASU game coming up, there's always sort of maybe a little bit of added pressure for a school or a team when you go against your biggest rival. As a team, do you feel that going into these matches that there's sort of that X factor where it is a rivalry game, that there may be more added pressure? Or do you as a team feel that it really has no effect and it's as if, going up against Washington or Oregon State that aren't rivals? Does it not really mess with the team, or do you feel there is those, factors that maybe it can play into how different your game could feel?
I think it can definitely play into it. I think it played huge into it last year. We had a lot of returning players, as did ASU. And so going into those games, that felt like a huge rivalry. Obviously, U of A and ASU always is a rivalry. But I think with this year's team, we have several foreign players. We have several freshmen. And I don't think that they really understand that long-standing rivalry that's there, which I think actually is beneficial, because then it doesn't add any of that extra pressure. And not having fans in the stands. When we go to ASU and their stands are packed, that's a little bit intimidating for us. And then last year when they came to us, our stands were packed. And so that was a little bit intimidating for them. And so I think that aspect of not having fans also actually decreases that pressure that we feel. So I think we're just, excited to go into another weekend. Regardless of who's on the other side of the net, we have an opportunity to compete and to get better and to hopefully, come out with 2 wins.
Anne Marie, go ahead.
Paige, any interest in coaching afterwards? As I keep hearing you talking about leadership, I'm wondering post volleyball what your plans are.
Yeah, I'm actually planning on going into sports ministry. I'm joining staff with the Fellowship of Christian Athletes here in Tucson. I've thought a little bit about coaching. That's definitely something that I could do on top of that full-time staff position. I was talking to Matt Dyke the other day, our assistant coach, actually, about he was like, I think he'd be a good coach, and the younger age ranges. I love working with young kids, young girls especially. I think that I can have a lot of influence on young kids. Yeah, I've definitely thought about coaching. I think it would be, especially after last week and kind of being on the sidelines, I really enjoyed that role, actually. Obviously, I wanted to be playing and I wanted to be doing that, but I genuinely enjoyed kind of being behind the coaches and hearing what they're saying during the match, and then being able to give feedback of things that I was seeing. So I think that coaching, at least at a younger level to start out, is definitely in the cards for me.
What exactly are you going to be doing on the staff of Fellowship of Christian Athletes?
Yeah, so I will be working one-on-one with high school students in the area of Tucson. So through FCA, schools that have a program have weekly, they call them huddles, and the students meet, and each campus has a leader, and so I will kind of oversee those at the high school level, be involved with those, and then I'll also be involved with the program here a little bit at the U of A, which I have been throughout college, and so I'll kind of get to continue that. Instead of being a student on the leadership team, now I would be kind of a staff member and be kind of like a one-on-one mentor for students, for student athletes.
That's a paid position post-college?
Yeah.
That'll be a paid position. I also understand it doesn't sound like you've made your decision about whether or not you will come back for that senior year. Other than your back, what factors were you taking into consideration there? I'm interested to see Lauren Ware and the rest of these big bodies all together. I'm curious what you think.
Yeah. There's definitely a lot of factors going into it. One is that I'm finishing my undergrad in May. And so, already having a job offer that doesn't require extra schooling, that is a huge factor. I would either have to start a master's program or take, non-degree seeking classes and get a graduate certificate. So I think school is definitely a huge factor that's weighing in that, whether I want to continue with that so that I can play. I think another factor is, I think 4 years doing this is a lot. And I heard Dave a little bit talking about how, the daily grind, it's a lot to handle mentally and emotionally. And so I think that's also a huge factor. I'm going to have to evaluate after this season is over. How am I feeling mentally and emotionally? Can I do this for another season? That's going to play into it also. And then, physically, it's physically taxing as well. And then, adding an injury on top of the normal physical tiredness that someone is feeling after playing at this level for 4 years, that'll also play into it. So I think once the season's over in April, I'm really going to take some time, probably a few weeks. Dave knows that the decision is not going to be given to him anytime soon. I'm going to take some time, evaluate where I'm at personally, evaluate, do I want to continue in school just for the fact that I can play? Just all the things.
All right.
And I'm sorry, Ryan, but that's all the time we have. I have to run out to Hillenbrand, so I have to go. But thank you, Paige. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, Paige.